Are they born this way, or did they learn to be this way? Where in the world did all of this narcissistic behavior come from? Welcome back to the Covert Narcissism Podcast, where we talk about the hidden, confusing, and all too often misunderstood world of covert narcissism. Today's episode tackles one of the most common questions that I get. Is narcissism something you're born with, or is it something that's learned? And the answer, like most things in psychology, is both simple and complex because the answer is both. Let's dive in. Let's start with the nature side, what we're born with, what we often refer to as temperament or biological predisposition. You see, some people are naturally more sensitive and some less. Some are naturally more reactive to stress and some less. Some are more drawn to external validation and some are more drawn to internal validation. In and of themselves, none of these are bad traits. In fact, they are often connected to our level of creativity, analytical, the analytical side of us, empathy or motivation and drive. It's connected to who we are. But when those traits, whatever those traits are, when they meet an unsafe or emotionally neglectful environment, that's when there's a problem. You see, these traits can then become the breeding ground for narcissistic defenses. Narcissism is a defensive mechanism. It's a response to an unsafe environment or a perceived unsafe environment. You see, it's an unsafe environment when you are a child under a narcissistic parent, but it is a perceived unsafe environment when you are in an adult relationship and it's like a healthy and safe relationship, but something happens that resembles your childhood. Let's look at an example. A child who is naturally sensitive and emotionally tuned in may learn very early that vulnerability is dangerous. Maybe they were shamed for crying. Maybe they were ignored when they were scared. Maybe they were only praised when they performed well. So that sensitivity, that emotionally tuned inness that we might look at as a strength, it's a natural emotional radar becomes a liability. And so for the child, they learn to shut it down because every time they cry, they're shamed. Well, their tears might be fine. It's an emotional sensitivity, but instead they get shamed for it. So they shut it down because that's not safe. So they learn to perform instead. They learn to protect themselves. And in order to protect themselves, they create a false self, a mask. And that mask might look confident and charming and in control, but it's often built on quicksand. Their good traits from birth, these personality traits, are flipped against them and they shut it down, putting reactions and defenses in its place. Sound familiar? Many survivors of narcissistic abuse voice this. Their good traits were used against them, so they replaced them with callous reactions. Then they find themselves questioning if they're the narcissist in the relationship because you take your good traits that are being abused and manipulated and you replace them with narcissistic survival responses. So yes, there is a nature piece at play here. We are born with tendencies towards, people pleasing and sensitivity or standing up for ourselves more and self-care. We're born with these predispositions, but nature alone does not explain narcissism. Now let's talk about nurture. What someone experienced, especially in childhood, what they grew up with. Many narcissists were raised in environments that were emotionally unsafe, chaotic, controlling, dismissive. Maybe one or both parents were narcissists themselves. And this is the key that I want you to hear. Narcissism is often, not always, often a response to narcissism. When a child grows up being manipulated, ignored, controlled, and used for emotional supply, they learn to adapt. And some of those adaptations become narcissistic traits. It's a survival mechanism. Their own ability to adapt, which again, let's go back to nature. They were born with this ability to be adaptive, which is not a bad thing, but that ability to adapt is what causes them then to adapt into these survival mechanisms. So let's say you had a parent who always needed to be right. They never apologized. They made you feel like your needs were a burden. Well, what did you learn? You learned to either shut down or to fight for your space. You learn to protect your ego. You learn to create a persona that will get your approval, the approval that you're after, even if that persona is not really you. This is the learned behavior part. Narcissism becomes a shield. It's a set of coping mechanisms. It's not always conscious. In fact, it rarely is. Most of the time, this remains subconscious. And in this subconscious state, out of awareness, which this is a large part of why it wreaks so much havoc on future relationships. Now, here's the twist, and it is an important one. Not every child raised in a narcissistic household becomes narcissistic themselves. Some become deeply empathetic. Some become caretakers, peacemakers, or chronic overfunctioners. Some develop intense anxiety or perfectionism. Others struggle with boundaries and they over-identify with other people's emotions. People are born with different nervous systems. Okay, this goes back to the nature piece, different personalities, different tendencies, different emotional tolerance levels. One child might develop narcissistic defenses to their environment, where another might become instead deeply empathetic, often to their own detriment. They might become the classic people pleaser, the fixer, the one who's always trying to earn love from other people. So yes, narcissism is a survival response, but so is what we call codependency. So is hyper independence. So is shutting down emotionally. How someone responds depends on the mix of who they are and what they lived through. These are all survival responses, but they don't all look the same. Narcissism is just one possible outcome of a painful or invalidating environment. And here's something else that really surprises people. Some narcissistic adults weren't raised by narcissists at all. Instead, they grew up in homes that maybe were emotionally neglectful, but in a different way. Maybe it wasn't narcissism. Perhaps achievement was idolized, vulnerability was just ignored, or emotions weren't modeled or discussed. Maybe the child was even overindulged. They were never taught limits, never held to be accountable. Maybe they were praised without foundation or cause. All of this can also cause that child to develop these narcissistic tendencies. In these cases, narcissistic patterns may form, but not necessarily or not so much as a defense against abuse, more as a way to create identity, control, safety, and value in the absence of, I don't know, emotional grounding. So whether narcissism develops as a defense against harm, or as a strategy to secure their significance in this world, the outcome is the same. It's a false sense of self, a set of rigid coping mechanisms, and a disconnection from authentic emotional intimacy. This is why it's so important not to oversimplify the origin of all of this. There's no one size fits all explanation because human beings are complex. But here's the good news. Regardless of how narcissism develops or how your children are wired, what gets nurtured in them now still matters. So even if they have a tendency towards narcissistic traits, that doesn't mean they're going to be a narcissist. The nurture that you provide to them still counts, and it still matters. Your influence as a present, emotionally aware, and healing parent has the power to rewrite what they believe about themselves and about love and about others and about their place in this world. Now, here's where it gets especially tangled. Imagine someone with narcissistic tendencies marrying someone who has developed narcissistic coping mechanisms. This creates a massive toxic dance. This is a relationship built not on mutual respect or genuine connection and vulnerability, but on ego battles, on control, blame, and emotional disconnection. And let's go a little deeper. Many survivors of narcissistic abuse end up asking themselves, does this make me a narcissist too? Because they've had to protect themselves. They've had to shut down, or they've had to fight back in ways that don't feel like them. So let me be clear here. Responding to narcissistic abuse with self-protection does not make you a narcissist. It makes you human. But narcissistic traits do not equal narcissistic personality disorder. There is a difference between the traits or the tendencies and a pervasive, rigid pattern of behavior that lacks empathy, vulnerability, accountability. So, what does this mean for healing? If you are listening to this and wondering whether someone you know was born a narcissist or became one, it's important to remember this. The why they are a narcissist does not change the impact of their narcissism. While it is helpful for many to understand where this came from and what happened here, it certainly does not change the damage that has been done and is still being done. Whether it's nature, nurture, or both, the emotional harm that they've caused is real. And while understanding their backstory can offer context, it does not excuse the behavior. I have heard so many times, well, they had a rough childhood. Lots of people had rough childhoods. Lots of people went through that. But not everyone blames and rages and plays victim mode and otherwise manipulates the emotions of their partners. No more excuses. Here is where this knowledge does help you. It doesn't help you in regards to making excuses, but here's where it does help you. It empowers you. Because once you see narcissistic behavior for what it is, which is a maladaptive survival strategy, you can stop trying to fix it. You can stop thinking that it's your fault. You can stop thinking that it's your job to heal them. You cannot fix this for them. You cannot love it out of them. If they are ever going to change, they have to do the work for themselves. So instead, focus now on your own healing. Focus on identifying your own coping mechanisms. You have them. You've learned them. Even the healthiest childhoods around, you still have coping mechanisms. So focus on those. Identify them. Shift from survival mode to self-awareness. Shift from learning to focus on learning to meet your own needs in a way that doesn't betray your truth. So is narcissism something you're born with or something you learn? It's both. It's a tangled root system of biology and environment, of temperament and trauma. But here's what I want you to really take in. You can be born with personality traits that lean towards narcissism and never become a narcissist. Because self-awareness, healthy relationships, emotional growth can interrupt that trajectory. On the same note, you can be born with traits that lean away from narcissism. You can be born with traits that lean towards empathy, sensitivity, a strong moral compass, and still spend your adult life using narcissistic coping mechanisms. Because when you are hurt enough, neglected enough, manipulated enough, you develop armor. And sometimes that armor starts to look a whole lot like the very thing you were trying to protect yourself from. Yes, I understand that this gets confusing. I get it. It's not black and white. But narcissism is not a destiny. It's a pattern. It's a pattern that's formed, reinforced, and sometimes passed on. But patterns can be disruptive. If they can be learned, they can be unlearned. And for those of you on the healing side of this, your job is not to diagnose someone else's root causes. Your job is not to fix them or to, make sure you say the 51st time and say it the right way when 50 times didn't work. No, that is not your job. Your job is to reclaim your peace, to stop making someone else's survival strategy your responsibility and instead choose your own healing with compassion and clarity. Now, if this episode resonates with you and you're ready to dig into your own healing, not just their behavior, but your own healing, check out my coaching programs at covertnarcissism.com. I have been blessed to be able to help so many people get through this. So whether you're still in the relationship or already out, you don't have to do this alone. I ask you to help me continue this mission of spreading awareness to our world. Be sure to subscribe or share or leave a review. All of that helps others to find this content too. Your story matters and so does theirs. Our healing as a community is so worth it to this world. I wish you so much peace on that journey of healing. You've spent so much time thinking about them, what they did, why they did it, and how it broke you. Now it's time to focus on you. I want to personally invite you to join me for an in-person retreat, a healing retreat that is now about you. Join me for this weekend getaway of healing, clarity, and connection with others who have walked through this same fire. It's time to lay it down, to breathe again, and to feel safe in your own skin. We keep it small, just 12 women, so it stays intimate, powerful, and personal. Go to covertnarcissism.com/retreat to claim your spot. It's your time to heal. The information provided by Renee Swanson, Covert Narcissism Podcast, and CNG Life Coaching is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a health care provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. Renee shares stories from her personal experience as well as from those she has talked with for several years. Her material does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support any allegation or claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and information provided.